What if everything you've been told about attraction is backwards? What if the very behaviors women claim to want are the exact behaviors that repel them? What if there's a secret operating beneath every interaction, every relationship, every moment of connection that nobody talks about because naming it would break the spell? The ancient Stoics understood this secret. Marcus Aurelius practiced it. Epictetus taught it. Seneca wrote about it in coded language. But they never spelled it out directly. Why? Because some truths lose their power when spoken plainly. Some realities only work when they remain unspoken. Today, I'm breaking that silence. I'm revealing what women themselves often don't consciously realize they're responding to, what they claim they want versus what actually triggers attraction. And why the Stoic approach, the ancient masculine philosophy that prioritizes self-mastery over external validation, remains the most powerful force in modern relationships. This will make some people uncomfortable. Women won't want you to know this, because once you see it, once you understand the mechanism, you can never be controlled by it again. Here's the secret. Women don't want you to need them. They want you to choose them. And those two things, needing and choosing, create completely opposite energies that most men confuse their entire lives. When you need a woman, when your happiness depends on her presence, when your sense of worth comes from her validation, when your emotional stability requires her approval, you become repulsive, not because you're weak, not because vulnerability is bad, but because neediness triggers a primal response in women that kills attraction at its root. The Stoics understood this deeply. They taught that your internal state should be independent of external circumstances, that you should be the source of your own contentment, that you should need nothing outside yourself to be complete. This wasn't about being cold or unfeeling. It was about being free, free from the tyranny of needing others to feel okay about yourself. And that freedom, that self-sufficiency, that's intoxicating to women, because it's rare. Because most men are walking bundles of need disguised as confidence. Because a man who genuinely doesn't need her validation is a man who's actually powerful. And power, real power, not dominance, but self-possession, that's what creates lasting attraction. Think about this from an evolutionary perspective. For thousands of years, women needed to identify men who could remain stable under pressure, who wouldn't crumble in crisis, who possessed internal strength regardless of external circumstances. A man whose emotional state depended on her mood. That's a liability. That's someone who'll fall apart when things get difficult. But a man whose emotional state remains constant, that's security. That's strength. That's someone who can handle adversity. This programming runs deep, deeper than conscious thought, deeper than modern values about equality and partnership. At the instinctual level, women are scanning for men who possess genuine self-sufficiency. Not performance, not facade. Actual internal stability that doesn't waver based on external validation. The Stoics knew this. They built philosophies around internal locus of control, around emotional self-mastery, around not being controlled by circumstances. And those philosophies, when embodied, create the masculine presence that women instinctively respond to. Not because of manipulation, because of alignment with deep psychological patterns that exist for good reasons. But here's where it gets complicated. Women will tell you they want you to need them. They'll say they want to feel important, want to know they matter, want to be your priority. And all of that is true, on one level. But there's a paradox operating here that most men never grasp. They want to matter to you, but they don't want to be necessary for you. They want to enhance your life, not become your life. They want to be your choice, not your crutch. The Stoics would call this the difference between preference and attachment. You can prefer something, enjoy it, value it, without being attached to it, without needing it to be okay. That's the sweet spot. That's what women respond to. A man who clearly enjoys her, values her, prioritizes her, but who would be fundamentally fine without her. That sounds harsh. It sounds like you shouldn't care, but that's not it. You care deeply. You're just not dependent. There's a massive difference, and women feel that difference at a cellular level. They can sense when your attention comes from abundance versus scarcity, from choice versus need, from preference versus desperation. And they respond accordingly. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about this in his private meditations. He ruled the Roman Empire, had access to anything and anyone. Yet he constantly reminded himself not to be controlled by external desires, not to need things to be a certain way, to maintain internal freedom regardless of circumstances. This wasn't about not caring. He cared deeply about his duties, his family, his empire. But he didn't derive his sense of self from them. His internal state wasn't dependent on external outcomes. He was complete within himself. And that completeness, that self-sufficiency, that made him powerful beyond measure, not just politically, personally. Now imagine bringing that energy to a relationship. You value her, enjoy her, make her a priority, but your happiness doesn't hinge on her. Your sense of worth doesn't come from her validation. Your emotional stability doesn't require her presence. You're a complete person who's choosing to share your life with another complete person. That's partnership. That's what creates sustainable attraction. And that's what most men never achieve because they've been taught the opposite. Taught that love means dependency. That commitment means making someone your whole world. That devotion means needing them to feel complete. Let me show you how this plays out practically. Two men dating the same type of woman. First man calls constantly, texts frequently, gets anxious when she's slow to respond, needs reassurance that she's still interested, plans his life around her availability, drops his plans when she's free, makes her the center of his universe. He thinks he's showing love, showing commitment, showing her she matters. What she experiences is suffocation, pressure, the burden of being responsible for someone else's emotional state. She can feel his need emanating from every interaction. His happiness depends on her. His mood reflects her attention. His sense of self requires her validation. That's terrifying. That's exhausting. That's a trap she'll eventually need to escape. Second man enjoys her company, makes time for her, but maintains his own life, his friendships, his interests, his purpose. He responds to texts when he sees them, not immediately because he's been staring at his phone. He's happy to see her, but he was also happy before seeing her. He values her presence, but his emotional state doesn't collapse in her absence. He's consistent, stable, present when together, but not desperately clinging. What does she experience with him? Freedom, safety, the comfort of being wanted without being needed. She can tell his interest is genuine because it's not compulsive. He's choosing her, not grabbing onto her because she's the only thing keeping him afloat. That's attractive. That's powerful. That's what keeps women engaged long term. The Stoic practices that create this. First, find your purpose beyond any relationship. Build a life you're excited about, independent of partnership, career, mission, creative pursuit, physical challenge, something that gives you direction and fulfillment. When you have purpose, when you're building something meaningful, relationships become enhancement rather than necessity. You're not looking for someone to give your life meaning. You're looking for someone to share a meaningful life with. Massive difference. Second, develop emotional self-sufficiency. Learn to process your feelings without needing constant external validation. Build the capacity to be with discomfort without immediately reaching out for reassurance. Create practices that ground you in yourself. Meditation, exercise, journaling. No. Whatever helps you return to center without needing someone else to get you there. This isn't about being emotionally closed. It's about being emotionally mature. Third, maintain strong friendships and community outside the relationship. Don't make her your only source of connection. Don't abandon your social life for her. Keep your friendships strong, your hobbies alive, your interests pursued, not as backup options in case the relationship fails, but as genuine parts of a full life that relationship enhances but doesn't replace. Here's what women won't tell you directly. They test for neediness constantly, not consciously, always, but instinctively. They'll pull back slightly to see if you panic. They'll be busy to see if you can handle space. They'll disagree to see if you need their approval. They'll be in bad moods to see if their emotional state controls yours. These aren't games. They're calibrations. They're checking whether you're self-sufficient or dependent, whether you're solid or reactive, whether you're choosing them or desperately clinging. And your responses to these tests determine whether attraction grows or dies. When you respond to space with panic, with increased contact, with neediness, you fail. When you respond to disagreement, with people-pleasing, with abandoning your position, with needing consensus, you fail. When you respond to her bad mood by making it about you, by taking it personally, by needing to fix it immediately so you can feel better, you fail. But when you respond to space with your own life continuing smoothly, when you respond to disagreement with calm confidence in your position without needing her to agree, when you respond to her bad mood with presence but not absorption, with support but not codependency, you pass, and attraction deepens. Seneca wrote about emotional resilience in relationships, about not being controlled by others' opinions or actions, about maintaining internal stability regardless of external chaos. He understood that the moment you make someone else responsible for your emotional state, you've given away your power. You've made yourself a slave to their moods, their choices, their presence. That's not love. That's dependency. And dependency breeds resentment in both directions. The dependent person resents needing someone. The needed person resents the burden of being needed. Neither is happy. The Stoic approach offers freedom. Freedom for both people. When you're emotionally self-sufficient, she doesn't carry the burden of managing your feelings. When she's not responsible for your happiness, she can be herself without fear of destroying you. That creates space for authentic connection, for real intimacy, for partnership between equals rather than codependency between incompleteness. Why this remains hidden? Because naming it breaks the social narrative. The narrative that says love means dependency, that devotion means making someone your world, that commitment means needing them. This narrative serves a purpose. It creates bonds, keeps people together through mutual need, but it doesn't create happiness, doesn't create attraction, doesn't create thriving relationships. It creates trapped relationships. People staying because they need each other, not because they want each other. Women understand this on some level. They know that real attraction comes from being chosen by someone who has options, who has a full life, who doesn't need them but wants them anyway. That's validating. That's powerful. That's what confirms their value. Being needed by someone who needs everyone confirms nothing. But being wanted by someone who needs no one? That confirms everything. So they test for it, look for it, respond to it. But they can't tell you this directly. Because the moment they do, the moment they say, be less available, be less needy, be more self-sufficient, you'll try to perform those qualities. You'll fake indifference, manufacture busyness, pretend not to care. And that's just as unattractive as neediness, because it's still reactive, still based on external validation, still not genuine self-sufficiency. The Stoic man doesn't perform non-neediness, he embodies it. He's actually built a life he's satisfied with, actually developed emotional self-sufficiency, actually created meaning independent of relationship status. It's not a strategy, it's a way of being, and that's what makes it powerful. That's what makes it authentic. That's what women respond to, because they can feel the difference between someone performing confidence and someone possessing it, between someone faking self-sufficiency and someone living it, between someone strategically being less available and someone genuinely having a full life. The energy is completely different. One is manipulation. The other is authenticity. One is still need-based, just disguised. The other is genuinely free. Epictetus taught that freedom comes from wanting only what's within your control. Your thoughts, your choices, your character, everything external, including relationships, exists outside your control. You can influence them, but not control them. When you need external things to be a certain way to be okay, you're enslaved to them. When you're okay regardless, you're free. And that freedom, paradoxically, makes you more attractive, more powerful, more capable of genuine connection. Because you're not grabbing at people from emptiness. You're offering connection from fullness. Here's the transformation this creates. When you stop needing women's validation, you stop performing for it. You stop shape-shifting to please them. You stop abandoning your values to avoid conflict. You stop prioritizing their approval over your integrity. You start showing up authentically, having real opinions, setting actual boundaries, pursuing what matters to you regardless of whether it impresses them. And women respond to this. Not all women. The ones looking for someone to control, someone to manipulate, someone to use as a resource, they'll leave. Good. The ones who've done their own work, who are self-sufficient themselves, who want partnership, not dependency, they'll stay. They'll be intrigued. They'll recognize something rare. A man who knows himself, who likes himself, who doesn't need external validation to feel okay. That's the man they actually want. Not the man who needs them, the man who chooses them. The final layer. This approach doesn't just change how women respond to you. It changes how you experience relationships. When you're not dependent on someone for your happiness, you can actually enjoy them. When you're not needing constant validation, you can be present. When you're not using the relationship to fill internal emptiness, you can appreciate what's actually there. Relationships become about connection rather than need fulfillment. About sharing life rather than using someone to create one. About choosing daily to be together rather than being trapped together through mutual dependency. That's freedom for both people. That's the Stoic approach, and that's what creates relationships that actually last. Not because people are stuck together, but because they keep choosing each other. Because the relationship enhances lives that were already meaningful. Because two complete people are more powerful together than separate. Let me illustrate the contrast more starkly. Consider a man who loses his relationship. If he was dependent, if his entire emotional structure was built around her presence, he collapses. His world ends. He can't function, can't sleep, can't eat, can't work. His entire identity was external, built around being her partner. Now that identity is gone. He's nothing. This is tragic. Not just the pain of loss, which is natural and human, but the complete disintegration of self, the revelation that there was no core underneath the relationship, just emptiness that her presence was covering. Compare this to a Stoic man who loses a relationship. He grieves, genuinely grieves, feels the loss, misses her, but he doesn't disintegrate because his core identity wasn't built around her. It was built around his character, his values, his purpose. The relationship added to his life, enriched it, but wasn't the foundation. So, when it ends, the foundation remains. He's sad but intact, grieving but functional, missing her but still himself. This isn't coldness. This is strength, actual strength, the kind that doesn't need anything external to exist. And ironically, this strength makes losing the relationship less likely. Because women don't leave men who have their own center. They leave men who've made them the center, who've collapsed their entire world into the relationship, whose neediness has become suffocating. The Stoic man, by maintaining his center, by not making her responsible for his emotional state, creates the conditions where she can breathe, where she can be herself, where she can choose him daily without feeling trapped. That's what sustainable relationships are built on. There's another dimension to this that men rarely understand. When you need a woman's validation, when you're constantly seeking her approval, you're actually making her work. Emotional labor. She has to manage your feelings, reassure you constantly, be careful what she says so she doesn't trigger your insecurity. That's exhausting. That's a burden she didn't sign up for. She wanted a partner. Instead, she got a child who needs constant emotional management. The Stoic approach removes this burden entirely. When you don't need her validation, she doesn't have to provide it. When you're emotionally stable regardless of her mood, she doesn't have to manage your emotions. When you have your own purpose and identity, she doesn't have to create meaning for you. She's free. Free to be herself without worrying about destroying you. Free to have bad days without you falling apart. Free to disagree without you needing reassurance that she still likes you. That freedom, that lack of emotional burden, is incredibly attractive. Because most men are offering the opposite. They're offering emotional work disguised as devotion. The Stoic man offers partnership without burden, connection without dependency, love without need. That's rare. That's valuable. That's what keeps women engaged for decades, rather than months. So what now? Now you have the knowledge. The secret that operates beneath every successful relationship. The truth about what women actually respond to versus what they consciously claim to want. Now comes the hard part. Actually embodying this. Actually becoming the kind of man who doesn't need external validation. Who has built internal sufficiency. Who possesses genuine freedom. This isn't a technique you can apply tomorrow. It's a transformation that takes time, takes work, takes honest examination of where you're currently dependent and where you need to build strength. Start today. Start now. Build your life, your purpose, your self-sufficiency. Not to attract women, but to free yourself. The attraction will follow. The relationships will improve. The power will emerge. Not because you're manipulating anything, but because you've aligned yourself with timeless principles that create genuine strength. That's what the Stoics offered. That's what remains true today. That's the secret they're hiding. Women don't want you to need them. They want you to choose them. From strength, from completeness, from genuine desire born of abundance rather than scarcity. Build that strength. Develop that completeness. Cultivate that abundance. The rest takes care of itself.